Hello, Gems. Welcome to another episode of Tiaras and Tech. I'm your host, Shelley Benhoff, and today I'm talking to Jacqueline Baxter about her experience in acting and theater and how it helped her to become a conference speaker. She is a senior digital strategist at Sitecore, and we had so much fun talking about our experiences, both successful and not so much. And she also gave some great tips for speakers that I hadn't heard before. Without further ado, on to the episode. Hi, Jackie. Welcome to Tiaras and Tech. I'm so glad you're here. I just wanted to start off, we'll jump right in. Introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, where you're from, what you are working on now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This is the coolest podcast name in the history of ever. I love it. And I'm very sad that I don't have a matching tiara. Although I think it would get in the way with my headset. There's really only room for one thing up here. So my name is Jacqueline Baxter. Most people call me Jackie or Jax or hey you, when am I going to get that thing I need? I am originally from Idaho. I was born and raised in Idaho, but I have lived up and down the West Coast. I was up until May 1st of this year. I was entirely a West Coast person. I had never lived for any real length of time outside the West Coast until May when I moved to London, England. So that is where I'm living now. And I'm a senior digital strategist with Sitecore, which essentially means exactly what anybody who's listening to this probably means. I get paid to tell people what to do with their websites, how to make them work better, and what strategic steps they might have been missing in creating a better digital experience for their customers.
That's awesome. Yeah, I have so much admiration for strategy, and I've learned so much over the years because as a dev, I often don't think about the human part of things, because I'm writing the code and I kind of hope that somebody else will. But when I started out in programming, there were no strategists or, UI or front end. And I remember having to do all of that and just failing miserably. So I was wondering how did you start in strategy overall, and what does strategy mean to you?
That's a really good question. Strategy is something that my interest in it grew. I came from a very non-traditional background, which I think we're going to talk about a little bit later in the episode. But so when I started, I was very interested in marketing. I thought that was, and I still am. I think marketing is a really fascinating field. And so I ended up transitioning in the company that I was working in. I transitioned into the marketing department. And as I was working with clients and starting to really understand, specifically with Sitecore, but also with other platforms, starting to understand there really is a gap in the way that many brands approach a website. And that has a lot less to do with interest or belief in strategy and a lot more to do with cost and with time. Mm-hmm. And I really was so fascinated by the idea that for some reason, at some point in the history of web design and web development, we decided that these things were incompatible and that they couldn't happen at the same time, when in fact, all of them should be happening on parallel track with close communication between all members of the team, so that by the time you launch a website, your strategy is ready to go, your KPIs are established, your metrics are in place, you know what you're watching for, you know what you're going to optimize for, at least for the next 3 months, and everything's sort of pulling together in a really smooth ecosystem, as opposed to what we often see, which is that everybody agrees that's important, not as important, and I would even agree with this, it's not as important as having a functioning website. I would agree with that. It doesn't matter, you could have the best strategy in the world, and if you don't have a functioning website, nobody would know it. And so I was like, well, we'll get the website up and we'll get the website running smoothly, and then we'll talk about strategy. And if I have learned one thing in the last several years, it's that the website is probably never going to run as smoothly as people want it to before they start thinking about what I call the mythical phase 2. And the mythical phase 2 is what you push everything that you don't want to think about right now into. It's like, we're going to do everything in phase 2. And so that's really been something that I've enjoyed the last couple of years, is really seeing the market start to transition into thinking about all of these things, really using, I think Agile has a lot to do with that. And the way that people are transitioning to like, well, we need to work agilely. We need to have an agile workflow. I'm like, yes. And we need to be incorporating UX and design and strategy. And we need to work agilely across the whole ecosystem so we can really get you the website that your brand deserves.
Exactly. Yeah, that's an incredible insight as to how so often the moving parts don't always come together easily. And it's really important to bring together UX and strategy and dev, and just make sure everybody's on the same page. I'm sorry, I'm going off on like a tangent here, but I'm literally writing a course right now on communication and collaboration. So this is all fresh in my head. Yeah. And like trust and all of that. But yeah, so you and I are conference speakers. We have spoken at, multiple larger conferences, a couple smaller ones, and we both have experience in theater. And we both love musicals. Actually, this question isn't on the list I sent you, but I was just wondering off the top of my head, what show is your favorite?
Oh gosh,
I know it's hard. I'm sorry.
It is hard, but actually it's not as hard as it might have been about 2 years ago, because 2 years ago, while actually I was on my way to Sydney, Australia, I had downloaded because it's a long flight. But you remember flights back when we could take flights? That was fun, right? Maybe we'll get to do that sometime. I downloaded the musical Six at the recommendation of one of my friends. And it is the 6 Wives of Henry VIII in a like pop musical, so almost like a Spice Girls style pop group. And I've come to the conclusion that Hamilton walked so that Six could run. It's really clever done. It's a very young writing team. If I'm remembering right, they wrote it and produced it for the Edinburgh Festival, and they've sort of workshopped it, and it's become a slow burning, slow growing global sensation. And it's so fun, and all the songs are different stylistically, but it's also so rare in musical theater, which you will know because we're both musical theater fans, to see 6 women on stage.
Yeah.
And it's 6 female actresses, and the whole band is also women. And so not a dude in sight. There's not a dude in sight on this stage. And I don't think I'd ever seen that ever before. And so I have sort of my soundtrack for that Sydney trip is the Six soundtrack, because I just listened to it on repeat. So Six, the musical, has definitely risen to be my favorite at this point. If you'd asked me 2 years ago, we would have had to have like a really complicated conversation with brackets and in what category and on what day. And but now I can just confidently say it's Six.
Absolutely. That's crazy. I've never ever heard of that one. I will definitely tune in and listen to that whole soundtrack today.
The soundtrack is on YouTube, like an official. I love this about what they've started doing. Like you can actually create an official YouTube channel, so you're streaming it from the creators, so they actually get the ad revenue. So you can find it on their channel. It's not very long. It's only about an hour. And just treat yourself. It's so fun. I look forward to your review and hearing which song is your favorite.
Absolutely, yeah. I like Rent. Rent has been my favorite since I was in high school when it came out. Aging myself or whatever. And it was like a smash hit my senior year. And I had a solo in what was it? Seasons of Love. There's my stutter. It comes out sometimes. There it is.
Love it.
Cute.
No.
Yeah, it It of course wasn't the, I will, that one, not me. But
Another one.
yeah,
The other one,
another one.
all the solos in that song are great though.
Oh my
There's
God, totally.
no wrong solos, no bad solo in Seasons of Love.
Exactly. Alrighty,
Love it.
back to tech.
Okay.
Sorry for those
Back to
listening
tech.
that are not musical theater fans, but the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I know for me, those experiences acting on stage, singing in front of an audience of, hundreds, there was probably once where I sang in front of like 1,000 people because I went to a ridiculously large high school. So I was just wondering, what is your experience with acting and how did that help with your speaking career?
I mean, it has helped a lot. I was also a competitive speaker in high school. That was, for those of you who had friends or lives and didn't know that, you can actually compete in various speech and debate events, and I did all the way through high school. I was the state champion in impromptu speaking my senior year, and I think those two things, public speaking and acting, they're very closely intertwined in some ways, and they're completely different in other ways. But what I've brought and what I've learned from all of my time spent on stage, and I guess the thing that I think about a lot when people ask me, they're like, well, you're so confident on stage, and it's like, well, first of all, I think it's really fun. I love being on stage, and there's really nothing. You can learn that, but it can't really be taught, if that makes sense. You can learn to enjoy the adrenaline. You can learn to enjoy being in front of a crowd, but it really is something that motivates me, the energy that I get from a live audience. So this last 18 months has been very challenging because I've trying to present, just to a computer screen and trying to be as dynamic and entertaining as possible without knowing how that's landing is very difficult. But I think there's a lot of, there's classes that you can take, and there's, and I always would say when people are like, oh, well, what public speaking classes do you recommend? Like, actually, I don't recommend a public speaking class necessarily. I think you should go take an improv class. Go take a comedy improv class. And I say comedy improv because that's usually how it's billed, but if you can find just a straight improv class, I do that instead. Because one of the things that I love about improv, and one of the reasons why I credit it with so much of my success in this regard, is that you literally, the job of an improv class is to teach you how to think on your feet. It's to teach you what to do when somebody throws a question at you that you don't know the answer to, and how to engage and how to take every situation and turn it into something that you can use to entertain the audience. So I think in that respect, the training that you get as an actor is very helpful, because people used to throw vegetables at actors, and I think our sense memory, we've never forgotten that. Like, it's just come all the way down through the ages of like, at any minute somebody's not going to like what I'm doing and they're going to throw produce. So we're always trying to avoid that.
Yeah, I guess for us the produce is tweets or comments on videos and stuff like that. Yep. So how did you start speaking, and what was that first experience like?
Oh gosh. So I think I'll focus on how I started speaking professionally, because that's probably more pertinent to this topic. So my first speaking gig in the tech space was at SugCon in, I believe it was 2017. And I'll be really honest, I put together the proposal because I really wanted to go to Amsterdam, and that's where it was that year. And
I don't blame you.
Right? I was like, and I remember that the year before, I actually can't remember where it had been the year before, but I think because I actually hadn't been part of the company at that point. And so when I joined, though, I joined the company the summer before Symposium, and Symposium that year was in New Orleans. And I didn't get to go, obviously. But I remember asking my colleagues at the time, I was like, okay, well, but how do I get to go on these fun trips? Like, these trips look amazing. People get to go on these trips. Like, how do I become one of the people who gets to go on these trips? And the guy, Mike, who was sort of mentoring me in the marketing department, who I was nominally reporting to, he was like, well, if you get accepted as a speaker, they'll send you. And I was like, ding, really? Okay. So I did a bunch of research, and at the time, and still today, SugCon has a much more technical bent, which makes a lot of sense, right? The Sitecore community specifically is still pretty heavily skewed toward the developer side. Makes perfect sense. It's a product that was built by developers for developers. I love developers. Yay, developers.
Yay.
But I am not a developer. So I was like, well, if they want a technical topic, I'm not going to be able to give them a technical topic. But what I knew that I could talk about was the marketing features of Sitecore. And so I put together a topic that was basically all around Sitecore campaigns, which it's so funny to me because I feel like I've spent my entire life at this point talking about Sitecore campaigns like 3 times a week. But at the time, not very many people were talking about them. And I was petrified. There were so many. I mean, I was in this, fun venue, but I've been working because obviously as most people know, when you go to a conference, when your company flies you to a convention, it's not just like you get to sleep in and like watch the talks and eat bonbons and do your speech. Like you're going to the booth, you're working,
it's hard.
It's work. And so I'd been working, and I think we were on the second day, like not at the end, but like in the afternoon. So like in the last third of the conference. And so I was exhausted because, of course, jet lagged and not sleeping super well and all the stuff is going on. And I just remember being like actually physically cold. Like I'm standing in, I mean, yes, the air conditioning was champion, but like I remember standing there and like my fingers were so cold and just thinking like, okay, well, what's the worst that could happen? And unfortunately, I was like, well, the worst that could happen is everybody laughs at me and I never get to speak again. And what was really interesting was because I was petrified the whole way through, and I was actually co-presenting. So I only had like half of the work. But I remember like it was almost like an out-of-body experience the whole time we were doing the presentation. Like I was just going through it, like, let's get it done. And my co-presenter was so relaxed. And I was like, I'm used to this. Like, I'm a performer. Why am I so nervous? And I remembered, I got a really good piece of advice from an improv teacher of mine, who told me that if you're not nervous, it doesn't matter. And that if I was ever not nervous about an audition or a speech or presentation or anything, I should reevaluate, because that meant that it wasn't important enough to me, that I was doing it for the wrong reasons. And I think about that before I go on stage every time, because you're supposed to be nervous because it matters. It's important. You have something important to share. You want to make sure that you're getting your meaning across, that you're sharing this information. And of course, we're a community. The tech community as a whole is full of wonderful, brilliant people who you want to like you.
Yeah.
You're wired that way. You want them to like you. And that's completely understandable and valid. And so if you are nervous, that's a good thing, because it means you care. It means you're invested in what you're about to do. And I also recommend having like a list of some sort, so that in the 5 minutes before, you can just sort of put your headphones in and put your head down and just like have your moment where you remember that you are amazing, because they wouldn't have picked you for this conference if you weren't good at what you do. Like straight up, I have been a part of choosing presenters. They don't choose you because they're like, yeah, I guess, like, we've got a slot to fill, like, give it to that person. Like, that's not how any of this works.
Yeah.
They pick you because you're smart and you're good at what you do and you have something important to share.
That's amazing. Yeah, I also listen to one song in particular before I do any tech conference, like recording even, or I mean, especially if it's live, the Pokemon theme song.
There we go. Yes.
I want to be the very best, like no one ever was. To train them is my real test. To teach them is my cause, is what I sing. Yeah,
Yes.
can definitely tell I was a 90s kid.
I dig it though. That's amazing.
Yeah,
I love that you have something that you have like
a song.
that's what you do to
Mhm.
yourself. Because I have a playlist and it kind of
Yeah,
depends on what, but I'll be very honest, like the stuff on there you would sometimes never predict. People are like, what are you listening to psych yourself up? And I'm like, Lorena McKenna. They're like,
nice.
to psych yourself up? I'm like, you know
Sure.
what? I just need to do me for a minute. Can you go check the sound or something? Like, I just need to do me for a minute.
Exactly. Yeah, that's so funny. Um, my first speaking uh engagement, I guess professionally, was really at the, well, you know what? I probably shouldn't say, but it was in Rome. Um,
Ooh.
and I was organizing this event, and my my boss got sick, and so he sent me all of his slides and his presentations on like the budget and the financing and stuff that I didn't know. Like I was a manager, I was like a team manager. He sent me all of this stuff. I was so nervous, but I I had a friend there who had edibles, and
There we
so
go.
I I nailed it. I was just
Absolutely. Hey,
yeah,
before my thesis defense in college, I remember my roommate, I was pacing and she was like, you need to calm down. And
yeah,
so she made me do 2 shots
yeah,
before she would let me go to my thesis defense. Like, that's whatever it takes, like
yeah,
just to get you. Would I recommend that on normal circumstances? Probably not. But whatever you need
yeah.
to calm you down, if it's, I think, I remember being at symposium once and I was about to present and I must have looked like I was about to fall apart because
Oh,
one of my colleagues came up to me with this little plate of desserts that
nice.
he'd gone and like talked the caterers out of. And he showed up with these little mini plate of petit fours and he was like, I think you need to eat these. And I was like, that's not the worst idea I've ever heard. I'm going to eat these.
I just wanted to take a quick pause to talk about today's sponsor, Bluehost. I use them to host all of my WordPress websites, and I can say that their tools are very easy to use and their customer service is outstanding. A great thing that you can do for your career is to create a portfolio or a blog. This will make you stand out to hiring managers and can take your career in directions you have only dreamed of. If you don't think you have anything to share on a blog, think about things that you have struggled with in your career. Chances are others have also struggled and you can help them out. Bluehost plans start at just $2.95 per month. Think about it. For only $2.95, you can set up your very own WordPress site and you can do it in under 10 minutes. For $2.95 and 10 minutes of your time, you can make a great investment in your future. Visit tiarasandtech.com/Bluehost to get started today. Now back to the episode. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it helps. I have had experiences in school, in high school, where like my stutter just would not allow me to do a presentation like fluently, and like the teacher was even laughing and people in the front row were like laughing out loud at me. As so I've had that experience of being humiliated, you know. When I turned that around in college, I had one class where the teacher was a total bitch, and she gave me a C and I was a straight A student, and like I contested it and stuff. But then like I had a meltdown, like I just couldn't get out words. But then I had a class with a teacher who loved me and was really supportive, and I nailed a speech in that class. One person had seen the other one, and she came up to me afterwards and was like, "You made me cry. That was amazing. That was amazing." And
That's
ever
fantastic.
ever since then, I think about her, and just like her and the teacher, if you have someone who supports you. Just focus on that. Don't focus on the people who are sitting in front of you laughing because they're ignorant, or like tweets that come at you that are just like, really? You thought that in the first place, you typed it and then you sent it to a person on the internet. Why?
Yeah. Like that took a lot of your time, random person. Also, on a side note, what were the names of your high school teacher and those people in high school? I just want to talk.
Yeah.
Just, luckily, for no reason.
Luckily, I don't even remember, because I've just shot past. Yeah. Yes, so good. It's like everyone in my life whoever tried to make me feel, inadequate or make me stop what I'm doing, I'm always just like, no, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And if you don't like it, then whatever, just anyway.
That is a you problem.
Yeah.
As the kids say, that sounds like a you problem.
That is. Yeah. It's just so sad. So we've already talked about some advice for speakers. Is there anything you have in the way of advice for people who are interested in strategy?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question.
I'm sorry, that one was also not on the list. Sometimes I dig it.
I love it. I love it. I think the thing that one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot is that when it comes to strategy, inspiration comes from a lot of different places. And there are a lot of different backgrounds that you can come from, and you can be a really good strategist. There's a lot of different ways that you can come field and still be tops at it. I think the sort of base level requirements are creativity and the ability to problem solve in a cooperative way. So this is not a single person sport. I'm not going to say that there's no I in team because it drives me nuts. I'm like, sure there is. But the strongest strategy I've ever been a part of have been the ones where everyone's sort of pulling toward the same goal, and you have 3 to 5, maybe even as many as 7 people, all who come from different backgrounds, all of people who are coming at this problem from different angles, who bring themselves to work in a way that really can pull together the best product for the client. And so I guess the thing that the sort of what that all comes down to is, if you're interested in strategy, I mean, I'm always definitely willing to talk. I think you'll find most people who are in the strategy field are willing to talk. So shut us up about what we do. We're very enthusiastic. We're a very enthusiastic bunch. But to ask questions and to think about how you would solve problems, not necessarily by reading books, or although those are valuable and there's a lot of really good books out there, but some of the best advice that I've ever gotten has come from art history lectures. And like, I was actually just thinking about an art history lecture. I'm like, oh, I can turn that into a presentation. Like that really speaks to digital experience, actually. And to bring all of yourself in that way, like don't think that your philosophy degree doesn't have anything to do with this, because it does. If you have learned how to think and how to problem solve, and if you are capable of being creative in those ways, you can be a great strategist. That's all there is to it.
Exactly. Yeah. I love that point. I always champion people who don't study what they do,
Yes.
Yeah. I've interviewed Microsoft Technology MVPs who were devs. One of them studied history in college and the other one studied physics, I think. Yeah. And she has no degree in programming, but she's still a programmer, because any experience that you've had, any education, whatever, they all influence your skills at work, and definitely problem solving critical thinking are
Mm-hmm.
big ones. This is why I hate interviews where they make you code like on a whiteboard. Really, like I don't even write most days. How do I hold this pen? How do
I know.
Plus I'm left-handed, so I'm gonna get the ink all over my hand, you know.
And I think about sometimes like it was years ago, but I remember reading an article about when Slack was hiring, and they were having tons of trouble filling this one role on their technical team. And because what they needed was somebody to like write for Slack. They needed Slackbot to have more of a personality, and they were having the hardest time. So they went out and hired a creative writing major to craft the personality of their bot. And I think about that constantly because it's like, yes, of course, a creative writing person is the best person to help you build a personality for your chatbot.
Yeah.
Like I can make it, well, I'm a bad example because I actually did a lot of creative writing, but there's, your marketing team can make the logic tree. That's not a problem. Or like you can have that built behind the scenes. That's not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want those responses to feel organic and natural and to have a very specific personality, then you need to hire somebody who can design that for you. And that person might not have a tech background. So I'm in the same boat where it drives me nuts that sometimes people like in HR, for HR positions, like they weed out the people who don't have experience in the field. They don't directly have experience. I would not have gotten the first job that I got at Hedgehog had the HR recruiter not functionally taken a chance on me. I mean, he told me that later. He said he got my resume and he looked at it, and I was not at all what they thought they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I had, enough of the sort of base level skills that it was like, well, I can see as how maybe, but like, this isn't what we think we want. And he told me, he said, I looked at your resume and I thought, well, she must think that she can do this job. So I'm going to call her and just see why she thinks she can do this job. And within the first half an hour, I had him convinced that I could do the job because I could,
Amazing.
because I was the right choice. So taking a chance on the hires that you're like, well, I don't really know why, but she seems to think she can do this job. So let's see what she has to say, can sometimes be a really solid decision. And I'm not saying that just because it got me a job.
Yeah, such a good point. I tell people all of the time, women overwhelmingly don't apply to jobs if they don't meet like 100% of the qualifications. I've just recorded a podcast on this, so it'll come out before this one. Yeah, but men will apply for jobs that they maybe have, 10, 20% or none of the qualifications.
None.
And yeah, it's just that we need to have the confidence in ourselves to know that we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to achieve 100% of what someone else wants, Right. Yeah.
Well, and like, that's not your job, especially as the job seeker. I mean, and that's when I moved to Portland, I was in the middle of, I mean, I can't really call it an existential crisis because I knew what the crisis was, but I was like, well, I want to change. I want a career shift. I don't want to do what I've been doing before. So I was like, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to apply for any job that I think I'm even marginally qualified to do. And I'm going to keep doing that until somebody gives me a job, because it's not my job as the applicant to weed me out. It's their job. If they don't want to talk to me, they won't call me. That's how job seeking works.
Love it.
So that was something that people sometimes ask. They're like, well, how did you get into this field? And I'm like, well, I applied for a job that I was qualified for, but not on paper, and talked my way into it because they liked my personality. It's like, you can teach someone to code.
Absolutely.
You can teach someone how to, use Gantt charts and how to manage a project and manage a team. You can teach people to do all of those things. You can't teach them to be enthusiastic and creative and personable and open.
Exactly.
Those are the things we should be hiring for. Not can you code? Look, somebody taught me how to code. Like me, I can code, not much, but a little bit.
That's
like enough that I can fix problems in Sitecore. So it's like, I promise anybody can be taught to code.
Absolutely.
If I can be taught to code.
I agree 100%. The saddest thing I hear overwhelmingly from women is that they quit coding because other people either made them feel inadequate or they just thought that it was too hard. If you think it's too hard, you haven't had the right teacher. I'm telling you just haven't. I was in a Verizon store a couple years ago, and I'll never forget this. It was so weird. Like I blew in there all like flamboyant and stuff, and I got into a conversation. I was the only person in there, so I wasn't keeping them from other customers. But these two ladies were interested in tech, and I told them they are in tech. They work at a Verizon store and explain technology to people. They are in tech. And they both thought that they weren't. And one of them said that she went to college and quit coding because she had one teacher that told her that she couldn't. And I looked at her and I was just like, F that guy.
Yeah.
And
what's that teacher's name? I want to talk.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, call me anytime. Here's my card. Like,
nice.
You can absolutely. Unfortunately, she never called, but I hope I helped her in some way. Just
I think you did.
Stranger out in the world, me doing
Sometimes
my thing.
Those are the best.
Oh my God. Yeah. I've had some crazy like interactions with strangers that have been poignant. Oh, one of them was at symposium, I want to say 2013, probably, in Vegas. They had this party with drag queens.
Okay. Yes.
And I was sitting off in a corner because I was just like having a day. And I was like alone and quiet. This Cher person came over to me and started talking to me. And I was just like, my career is in order and stuff. I'm, trying to lead, but I don't know how. She said to me, honey, sometimes you just got to grab life by the balls. Oh gosh, I'll never forget her. Holy crap. Oh my God. That was one of the experiences of my life,
Great advice.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great advice. Amazing. Perfect timing. Very memorable.
Yes.
Anyway, so to kind of wrap up, I wanted to talk about your London adventure because I'm super jealous. There was a time where I went to London 6 times in a year, and I got to know it so well that I could give people directions and stuff on the street if they asked me. Have you seen shows in London?
I have seen shows. Yes. So I got here in May, and I think I'd been here, I think it was like on May 18th or something that we entered phase 3, which of the controlled unlocking or whatever we're calling it today. And so theaters were allowed to reopen with social distancing and masking and everything. Good. So I went to see 6, which was playing, and that was an absolutely fantastic experience. And since then, I have been to a few shows. I've been to the Globe, which is fantastic. I went to see Romeo and Juliet at the Globe. And I went to see, everybody's talking about Jamie, which is now on Amazon, which, interestingly, speaking of drag queens, is based on a real life story about a high school kid who wants to be a drag queen. So that is now actually on Amazon Prime, which is why I went to see it, because they were closing it. And I was like, well, I should probably see it live before I see it filmed. So I'm very excited to see that. And then I actually just today made plans to go see the musical And Juliet, which is a pop musical. So it's songs from the last 20 years, and it's all revolves around the idea of like, what if Juliet had not committed suicide at the end of Romeo and Juliet and went off and had adventures? Wow. And I just watched the trailer before I booked the tickets, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a bop. Like, yes, please.
That's awesome. I regret never seeing a show. I went to London 6 times. I went to Harrods every time.
Harrods
was
is
my
amazing.
jam. Oh my God. I just wanted to walk in there. Princess Diana used to walk in there, I just wanted to walk where she walked. Yeah.
Hey, that's fair. I went to Fortnum and Mason for the first time, the fancy Philly, because my family had sent me a birthday present. And so I had to go on like a birthday quest to pick up my birthday present, which was actually quite fun. But I walked in and I was just like, oh, like it is fancy pants. Like you walk in there and it's like, and I was wearing like, I came from work. So I had my dress slacks and my nice jumper. And I mean, it's not like I didn't look like I didn't belong there, but I walked in and I kept waiting for somebody to come up and be like, excuse me, not you, if you could. You could see yourself out.
Yeah, I keep hitting this.
You talk with your hands like I do.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna have to reposition this mic at some point. But I had an experience where I wasn't asked to leave a store, but I was in Prada in Rome.
Okay. Oh,
and
yep.
I mean, they just looked at me like I was a piece of shit. I've never felt such hatred from complete strangers who had no idea who I was in my life, and then also in Rome, I was wearing, what are they called? Those, why can't I think of this? Those like rubber shoes.
Oh, Crocs?
Crocs. Thank you. And I mean, it wasn't the standard Croc. It was a cute pair. Someone on the street spit on my shoes. Yeah, I've had some experiences with travel.
That is extra. I mean,
right?
I think I was in Bologna, and I was with some friends of mine, and they were like, let's go into Versace. And I was like, let's not. Because we were college kids, like college kids from the US, and we were studying abroad. So we had on what would have been very fancy for my hometown or my college town, but look, I used to live in Portland, Oregon. There were like 2 things a week that I couldn't wear sweatpants to. So like the dress code is very different. And we walked into Versace, and my friends just like marched off like they owned the place. And I went and stood by the t-shirt rack because I was left table, because I was like, this is the safest place to stand. It's just t-shirts. Mm-hmm. And then I noticed that the clerks were watching me, and from like the adulthood vantage, I'm like, probably a combo of like, does this person need help? But also this person is obviously cannot afford what we are selling here.
Yeah.
And they were watching me so closely that I like reached over and just turned over the price tag on the top t-shirt. 600 euros for a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Like,
no thanks.
No, if you want to spend 600 euros on like a pair of shoes, I can sort of get behind that. If you want to spend 600 euros on almost anything, I can get behind. A t-shirt, like no, you don't need. The nicest t-shirt in the world should cost like 50 euros max. And that should be like, somebody made that by hand exactly to fit your specifications. Like
maybe then. Yeah. I remember in Prada, I picked up a wallet because I was sure that was the only thing that I could possibly afford. And I looked at the tag and it was 500 euros. And I remember saying to my friend, I don't even have 500 euros to put in this thing. Like, I can't buy it,
And there's some things, because as I've gotten older, and so my disposable income has gone up a little bit more, but I have found that there are certain things where I'm like, it goes on your feet. Like, what could it possibly do? But then unfortunately I get like the really nice suitcase or something. I'm like, well, I need a new one. Like, maybe I'll treat myself. And then it's like the best thing ever. And you're like, oh, okay. Well,
yeah. Oh my God. Suitcase wise. What is the brand that I have? It's like really expensive, but I was traveling a lot. Briggs and Riley.
Okay.
Every piece of luggage that you buy has a lifetime warranty. If anything rips or tears or whatever, you can call them up, send it back. They'll send you a new one.
Good.
Now, the carry-on that I bought from them, I think was like $400. That's a lot.
Okay. Yeah, that's a lot, but for a lifetime warranty.
Exactly. It looks really cool. It's nice and shiny. No, I'm just kidding. Like the inside is larger.
Okay, nice.
Except like it overall is the exact, the
right
specifications.
Size for
yeah. It just has like compartments and stuff.
Nice.
Not a sponsor. I'm just saying.
No. Hey, there are certain things I've sort of to tie it back into presentations that because I found that presentations work really well when you have like a client, either a client example, I mean, ideally a client example, but so often because of NDAs, I don't have a client example. So I figured out a couple of years ago that if I could find a publicly traded brand, like something public facing that I don't have anything to do with, that I can put them in my presentation and I can just talk about what they do that I think is really good and how that illustrates my large point. And in a minute, somebody is going to come and be like, are you getting a cut from Rothy's? Like, you talk about Rothy's a lot.
I've seen that. Yeah.
Like, okay, yes. However, counterpoint, it really is a great product. And no, I'm not being sponsored. Like to, yeah. I would certainly be happy to continue doing exactly what I'm doing. And they can just send me the handbag that I really want.
I love it. And thank you for drawing it back to speaking, because I could talk to you all day about stuff. I know, right? But I know that you're busy, so we're gonna have to wrap up. What do you have anything to promote? Any like upcoming speaking engagements or anything?
I don't. I've just finished presenting. Well, I just finished presenting at Content Marketing World, which was very exciting for me.
That's a good one.
First year. It was really like, yes. So if you happen to have a pass, then it's basically, I think you have until the end of the year to stream that. And I just presented at Symposium. So, but by the time this episode comes out, I think that those will be taken offline.
Probably, yeah.
But I mean, we're kind of headed to a lull for me speaking wise, because usually conference season is like April to October, and then everything kind of shuts down for the holidays and then for the beginning of the year. But I blog a lot more than I probably should. I post all in because I know myself well enough to know that I cannot be trusted to maintain a website. So all of those are on my LinkedIn profile, my LinkedIn post. I just put one out about trust and building trust with our customers so that we can be worthy of the data that they are sometimes willingly, often sharing with us. They just click accept so that they can see what time the movie is. They don't actually want to give us their data. And I put out one a couple of weeks ago about building relationships through digital active listening. So always nice to have people let me know what they think about that stuff.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I think that people will really enjoy this episode. I know I enjoyed making this one. So thank you.
This was so fun. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.